My name's Tom Hicks. I'm an artist based in the Black Country. For a while now I've been running a project called Black Country Type, which is started off with photography. It's multidisciplinary now, so I've produced short films, public sculpture, still working in photography, and it's, I guess the easiest way to describe it is photography of place, so landscape. But the landscape is the Black Country. The type element of it relates to words and typography. So my first photographs always had letter forms in some way or another. So a lot of what I was looking at to begin with was documenting things like factory signage. I was kind of keen on this idea that the Black Country factories, rather than get a graphic designer involved, they'd just do things in-house. So they'd got their own kind of typeface and approach to design, which was sometimes quite naive, but also often really well done. So, but these factories, they slowly replaced their signage. So I was sort of documenting it on bike rides really, and then it sort of expanded from there really. So as an art practice, it's been running for around 10 years, I'd say. Before that, I've done things like bits of writing, sort of small explorations into kind of documenting place, really. But overall, it's been an exploration of the Black Country, really, for about 10 years. Yeah, so my work slowly evolved. The first kind of major publication about my work was produced by The Modernists, who are based in Manchester, and they tend to work in the area of architecture and design, so they have a focus on British design really. But they got behind my work quite early on, and they produced a retrospective of my work in 2023. So photography tends to be the core of what I do. But I've also found ways to translate it into other art forms. So last year I was commissioned to make a public artwork by Art Gallery and Transport for West Midlands. And that was centred on Halesowen, so very site specific. I'd never really made a sculpture before. I just said yes and sort of worked out how to do it after that. But I made it about place, and again, what I decided to do was link it to Halesowen via typography, classic signage, and just the environment of that town. So yeah, it involved photo walks, but also things like handwritten graffiti, shop fronts that had been there since the 60s, but also brand new shops. So there's a nail bar called Fleeked Out, and I really liked the name of that. So I knocked on the door and said, do you mind if I make your sign into an artwork or incorporate it into an artwork? And after a little bit of discussion, they just said yes. But there's also things like the gents hairdressers in Halesowen as well. So little landmarks that you know, people would know of Halesowen, but I incorporated them into the sculpture in quite a subtle way. So I think typography and words, particularly signage, have quite an emotional resonance. So places like the swimming baths in Halesowen they had a huge sign that just said pool, and people remembered that from their childhood. So I think there's a real kind of emotional connection with typography. A lot of sculpture in the Black Country tends to look back at industry, so things like the glass industry or iron making. I thought it'd be nice to bring things up to date slightly. So a lot of people, particularly young people now, they really haven't seen an ironworks in operation or heavy industry. So I thought I'd link it to the contemporary landscape of the Black Country. So I chose one of my photographs as a basis for the work. So this was the side of a bingo hall in Oldbury. So it's quite a well-known photograph if you know my work, and it's quite bright. So I decided to have an aluminium sculpture made using pink, cream and blue representing the sky. So it's quite bold in terms of sculpture. A lot of sculpture in this region is bronze, or quite a dark coloured material. But I just thought, let's have an object that's representative of place, and the patterns on it were all taken from industrial objects as well. So it's industrial in nature, but also represents the Black Country landscape. So from the collection at Wolverhampton, I've chosen Incident by Boyd and Evans, and it dates from 1971. Firstly, I think I really just like the composition. It reminds me a lot of my own approach to composition, a nice kind of use of sky. But it also kind of resonates with me in terms of place. So I've worked in Wolverhampton for nearly 25 years, and this depicts the subway, but also one of the old university buildings, which I actually remember. For me, the subways in Wolverhampton are quite iconic, and I do like a photograph of a subway, so that instantly appealed to me. The building that's in the background was a science and engineering building, and that's been partly demolished and then they remodelled it, but I remember it as quite an iconic building for the university. And it also, for me, relates to the kind of ambition of Wolverhampton at that time. So when that building was put together, it was also around the same time as the School of Art. So these were quite bold statements for the city to say, we're going to have a building that's dedicated to art, but also a building that's dedicated to science and engineering. Yeah, I think what I really like about it is it's a moment in time. So it's why those three figures in the foreground are so close together. They don't seem to have anything to do with each other. I think Boyd and Evans do a lot of this in their work, where they show a moment and it's almost like storytelling. So whether these three people have anything to do with each other or they just happen to be passing, I think it's quite an interesting encounter, really. So yeah, I think the technique that's involved here seems to be airbrush. So the faces are quite realistic. There's a photographic quality to them, I think. But there is a storytelling aspect to their work that I really like. And it's not that sort of overt, so I think it leaves it to the viewer to work out what's happening. Why would these three people come together? And that's without reference to the guy at the top of the railings. So what's his kind of role in this as well? In terms of accent, I don't think I've got a really strong one, but obviously when I watch this back, I'll probably realise I have got one. My accent's based in Dudley, so I think it's fascinating with the Black Country accent that you can pin it down to really distinct geographic areas. So if you move from where I live, which is King Swinford, and then go into Cradley Heath, which is just up the road really, the accent's completely different. An outsider probably wouldn't really know the difference, but there are certain words that people from Cradley Heath would use. Quarry Bank, that area, I love that accent there, but the average person from outside of the Black Country probably wouldn't know the difference. So there are nuances, and you can tell as you go along, and I think the Wolverhampton accent's different to Dudley. Again, somebody from Birmingham probably wouldn't know the difference. They're all yams to them, I guess. But when I was at school, we had a teacher from Cradley Heath, and he taught woodwork, and I really liked his accent, and we all loved the way he spoke. So we're in King Swinford, and he seemed quite exotic compared to us with his accent. And we'd do a quiz once a week about woodwork, and we'd ask him to repeat any questions about the vice. So, because he'd say vice instead of vice. So the thing that you clamp wood in, it became this really kind of like long, elongated and kind of quite romantic word. So the vice. Also, he'd number the questions in this quiz. So we'd always ask him to repeat number 9, which is number 9. So we just loved his voice, so we'd always get him to kind of speak whenever we got the chance, really. Yeah, there's some great words. I mean, Yampy's one of the best. I exhibited some work in Cambridge recently, and I was trying to convince them to call it Yampy, but they thought that it would baffle people. I thought it would be a nice test for people who are studying English in Cambridge to look at sort of where it came from. But Yampy's a great one, which just means somebody who's just a bit kind of crazy, really, a bit unpredictable. It is a good one. So it's like, isn't it? But also, you say that when you agree with somebody as well. So it, you know, it's quite impenetrable sometimes. And yeah, there are so many words really, and it's its own dialect. So I guess in a way the Black Country stands out for that reason, because it's not just an accent, it's got its own set of terms. So like something that's quite hard would be called a bibble. So it's hard as a bibble. I've been coming to the gallery for years. Even when I was a kid, I used to come to Wolverhampton for various reasons. One was the football. The other was Ruby Red Records, which is a fantastic record shop, and you could, the guy who ran it was brilliant. You could put records on and they'd let you kind of put the needle on the vinyl, which was really trusting considering we were about 13 or 14. But the other big thing was the gallery, and it still is. It's, you know, it's not many places where you can just go in and get some culture and it's free. And I think when I was young, you have to kind of, the culture's there in the Black Country, but you have to seek it out. So record shops, libraries, and for me, galleries were like, they're the kind of the centres really. The pop art collection at Wolverhampton's just incredible. And for me, pop art was a way into art generally. At school, you know, we were taught art history, but we couldn't really get a handle on it. Well, I couldn't really get a handle on it until I saw things like work by Jasper Johns, Paolozzi. The idea that everyday life can be an art form. So taking in things like popular culture, music, advertising, the space race, and putting all that into a print. It kind of also seemed to demystify art as well. So, you know, art can be about your experience, and that's what my practice is about really. It's about, let's look at where we're from, look at the details in places and culture and bring them together, and just reframe it and represent it in a different way, I guess. What I really liked about the changes in this gallery was the pop art wing when that was built, and I think that was just a really bold statement for the city, and it still is. A lot of people still don't know about it, so when visitors come here, I often recommend they come and have a look at the pop art wing of the gallery. It's a gallery and museum, and I think for me, partly it's a little bit of a shame that the museum side isn't sort of more evident. So a place like Wolverhampton's got a huge history of cycling and production of motorcycles and cars and things like that. So it's a shame at the moment you can't get to see that anywhere, but maybe that's down to funding, I guess. But you know, a separate motor museum or cycling museum might be something that could happen at some point. I think we're well blessed for galleries in the region. So obviously Birmingham's got the Icon and the main art gallery there. We've got Wolverhampton here. It's a shame Dudley hasn't got a museum and art gallery anymore. There is a grand building in the town, but it's not being used for that function anymore. I think if there's an improvement I could suggest or would like to see was just more options for people who want to show their work, but haven't got a long track record of showing work. So part of my career is I'm the art librarian at Wolves Uni, so I've worked with the School of Art there for a long time. And that art school has had a long tradition of working, and it's interrelated really with Wolves Art Gallery. So I think it's great that there's that kind of ongoing tradition, and hopefully that will continue going forward. I think it's quite common in the Black Country that the achievements of the area are dealt with in quite a low-key way, but it's an important place. So things like the Black Art movement started in Wolverhampton, really had its first showcase at the School of Art. There's a conference about Black British art there, but also that was then exhibited in the art gallery. So that relationship between the School of Art in Wolverhampton and the Wolverhampton Art Gallery is really important, and I think it's one that should just keep continuing. A lot of people who've taught there have work in the collections here, so hopefully that will continue as well. Just kind of keeping an eye on the talent that's going through that school, and then keeping it in the kind of public eye as well.